This podcast is intended for adults only. We do not condone the use of any illegal substances, and anything we consume is for educational purposes only.
Because, we should be afraid of a plant that grows from the ground. And, endocannabinoid system is, it's in your body and it produces cannabinoids. I mean, you know what? I'm gonna stop because I'm gonna rant. Just play the music, Mitch.
Whoa, yeah, gato, yeah. I got my hoodie on, now peep the chest as human catalyst. Downtown Chula Vista, on Third Ave where I go cop some shit. Fuck a thief, so fuck zoomies, yeah, they whack ass jacket shit. Yeah, I move too swift, so I striking silence. Fuck the vibe.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Canna Kuyas podcast, where we are cultivating conversations concerning cannabis, culture, and creativity. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Mitch Narito.
And I am Eric Esteban. I am never going to call myself boy again after Kendrick Lamar. For real. But because how I always say it's your boy Eric Esteban?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that anymore. For real. I'm going to show y'all the man right now. Eric Esteban, the man, is coming for you.
He's growing up right before your very eyes and ears, folks.
It only took me 50 years. No, but just to give you a little bit of a quick thing, we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about our experience at the Long Beach Filipino Festival. Thank you to Philip Austria for that experience, because he was the one who gave us a booth and allowed us to kind of show off our wares and our T-shirts and our merch, and also talk about what we talk about on the podcast and reach out to some of the people who listen to us in Long Beach, which was great. But what did you feel? How did you feel about Long Beach? What were your experiences of the LBC?
It was a good experience. It was a very beautiful day. It was just a nice day at the park. I was at the 1-2 Productions booth where we had the Canna Kuyas merch out, and that was a little weird for me because there is still a big thing where people are just not very accepting of weed in the Filipino community, because people were passing by the booths and I got a lot of the titas and whatever giving me the side eye, like
disapproving looks.
Yeah, once they figure it out, it's like, oh, this is for the marijuana one.
No, if you guys listened to my interview with Grambo from the Dude Grows show and Grambo Grows and all that stuff, we talk about this because it was a trip for me when we'd sit at the booth and you'd have one tita who'd be like, oh, yeah, you guys, oh, you smoke, cool, then we smoke too, la la la. And then you'd have one be like, I'll give you that, you guys are about cannabis. At first they'd approach being excited because I was hosting and they'd recognize you from the stuff that you've done. And then, and they were like excited. And then when they realized we were on cannabis, they were like, okay, cool, thank you, bye.
No, there was one family that came up to me. It was like a full-on family. They had like a bunch of little girls, and they're like, "Hey, were you on The Good Place?" I was like, "Yeah." It's like, "Oh my God, you're Donkey Dog. Can we take a picture with you?" And I was like, "Yeah, for sure." And so I exited the booth. I'm taking pictures with them in front of the booth, and they're very excited, and then they start looking at the merchandise behind us, and they're like, "Oh, is this your company?" I was like, "Oh, well, no, we have the podcast. We're just selling our merch for the podcast." And she's like, "What's it about?" And I couldn't say straight up to her it was about weed. I had to be like, "Oh, this is, more adult content." And the mom was just like,
"Yo, can I? I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to interrupt you only because I want to give you this little nugget of wordage when you have those interactions." Mm-hmm. Part of the thing that because we're very different in this. Like we plan to talk about this difference, and we might as well talk about it right now.
Okay.
I look at this and view this as my medicine, right? We talk about that, and I repeat that over and over on this podcast.
Yeah.
So for me, when I talk about cannabis, I always use the word advocate or advocacy, and I always talk about the medicinal properties of it. So I always say medicinal marijuana, just to kind of, even though I don't like the word marijuana really, but I still use it because, marijuana ate, we still use it. But, I always use medicinal marijuana because that word medicine up top always disarms people. So for me, the goal of this podcast and because I kind of almost discovered this when Grambo was interviewing me about what do you guys talk about in the podcast.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I thought the goal of this podcast really is the advocacy of this plant and the destigmatization.
Are you having a stroke? Oh my God! Do I need to call 911? I need to call. Oh my goodness!
The destigmatism of this plant. You know, the decriminalization of this plant.
Okay.
And because it always goes back to the Harry Eisner quote for me, because we were criminalized for this plant before, or criminalized with this plant when it was first initially criminalized. So now when it is decriminalized and destigmatized, we should also be a part of that.
Yes, yeah, I didn't even refer to it like I didn't refer to it as cannabis or marijuana or weed or anything. I straight up was just like, oh, this material, like our stuff is, intended for adults. That's what I said.
Which is, and when it's a child, that's probably the best answer.
But the reaction that I got, like the mom looked at me and she's like, I can see that. Like I was like, oh, okay.
But then I think the mom appreciated you answering it in that way too.
Yeah, because I didn't want to.
Because the kid was young, right?
Yeah, they had little kids, like elementary school.
Yeah. So then again, their kids aren't my kids. They're not growing up with it, so it's different. And to be able to acknowledge and respect that difference is basically the whole thing. Like I'm never gonna flaunt in your face, but at the same time, I'm also not gonna hide it. Mm-hmm. So, like we were talking about how, like we had shout out to Ryan from Illa Manila. We had a few smoke breaks, and you were talking about how the difference was because you were like a little. Go ahead.
So I've always referred to myself as kind of like a low key smoker. Like I smoke a good amount, but I'm not very vocal about it. Like I've mentioned before, it's kind of like it's my secret. If you see me doing it, obviously I'm not going to deny it, but. Hold on, we're going to hold for an airplane.
No, it really doesn't pick up.
It doesn't?
Because I've held for my my other podcast, and I'm like, and then I listen back to it, and I'm like, oh, shit, I
perfect.
Held.
Anyway,
it's all good.
Yeah. So the way I view it, it's kind of like, I do it, but I'm not in your face about it. I'm not like blowing clouds in your direction if I can help it. And so, yeah, we go on smoke breaks with Ryan, and we were in a parking lot. And we're smoking. And for me, when I was smoking, like that's when a lot of like foot traffic was coming by, and the adults, they didn't care. But then like there was like little kids and stuff. And for, we weren't really trying to hide it. But at the same time, I was like, oh man, this makes me a little uncomfortable. I feel like I should have stepped a little further away, or at least off the main path, No,
I feel you. Cause I know that, cause I'm kind of, I walk down the sidewalk publicly smoking a joint, especially here in Cali. Mm-hmm. So, but if there is a family or there's I'm respectful. I'm going to fucking either walk in a different direction, cross the street, or it's going to be a different thing. I'm going to be afraid of them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want in any way try to get away. I push that away. I'm never going to, I don't think that, even as if you were a cigarette smoker, I think, especially not in today's society, I don't think you can be blatantly smoking and blowing it in everybody's faces.
Yeah.
But at the same time, because I view it as my medicine, I know that for me, like especially because my breaks were like, man, I need this. I've been fucking hosting and running around all day, and I need a little bit of a smoke break, and I wasn't, because we probably smoked in the same spot right in front of Ryan's car.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have that feeling at all. Because I already kind of moved that way in life. And as far as because I smoke publicly all the time. So if I see a family or I see a kid or I see a whatever that shouldn't be seeing me smoking, they're probably going to see it, but I'm going to do my best to not put it in their face and be right next to them. And hopefully if I can move far enough away, they're not going to even smell it.
Yeah, because I remember when we were in Chicago, I was smoking through the streets of downtown in Chicago, and it didn't really bother me. Like, I think it's just being stationary and then having other people walk around me, or I can't move away, where I'm kind of just like stuck in one spot. I think maybe that kind of contributed to things. And I just like.
Well, okay, I go back to, because we come from the days of Nas. Okay, I'll never forget this moment in my life. I'll never forget this moment in my life. I was in New York. I was doing shows in New York, and I was listening to "If I Rule the World." You know, where Lauryn Hill sings the hook, and in the first lines, first lines of that song are, "Imagine smoking weed without cops harassing." So imagine smoking weed outside on the streets without cops harassing. That's the exact first line of "If I Rule the World." And I was at that moment walking the streets of New York, on the streets, smoking weed without cops harassing. So I felt as if I've ruled the fucking world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was a trip because it was so empowering to me that we had come so far where that was the first thing Nas said. If there was anything, if the first thing that he said, if I could rule the world, the first thing that I would want to do is smoke weed out on the street without cops harassing. And in that moment when I was smoking weed without cops harassing, it was like a thing where I was like, you know what? We're in a new time. It's a different age. And
but that's why, like, being at the Filipino Festival, I was thinking
smoked in the festival.
No, it wasn't in the festival, but around the festival. I was worried about, like, titas harassing me, not cops. You know? Like, I didn't want.
Because titas harass harder than cops.
Yeah,
titas are harder harassers than cops. No, I get it, man. But for me, I think it probably is. And I don't know if we necessarily need to get into it too much because it'll start getting into personal stuff and how we move with our families. But I've been my parents have disapproved of me my whole fucking life. You know what I'm saying? So if my parents disapprove of what I'm doing, for the most part, I mean, and my parents support me, don't get me wrong. They love me, they support me, they've supported me my whole life. But at the same time, there's been that side eye of you're an actor and a comedian, you don't have a regular job type of that your classic Filipino artist, Filipino parent side eye. But having grown up and lived with that my whole life, I could give a fuck about what the titas think.
No, that's I feel you on that. But for me, like, the thing that kind of gets to me is that once people find out I smoke weed, it kind of sets up, like, even if they've known me for a long time and then they see me smoking for the first time or whatever, after they find out I smoke weed, there's kind of like a wall or a barrier that goes up when people talk to me because they only see me through that lens, even though all my behaviors and actions before this had never ever given any clue to that, like any of the stereotypical, like, oh, like ne'er-do-well or, like unhealthy or whatever type of, like whatever stigma is attached to it, right? Once people find out I smoke weed, it kind of like, it changes their view of me. And it could just be me.
No, I was going to say at first when you were talking that it might just be you, but at the same time, it's not. Because I feel those same judgmental looks and I see all those same judgmental looks and I understand and empathize with what they're talking about because, society, in fact, their whole, probably their whole, infrastructure of their lives is centered around the fact that drugs are bad, But for me, that's kind of my job. If I'm here steady, I'm like, if I can host for a fucking, how long did we host? How long did I host that fucking thing? We're up and down the whole side, from 10 o'clock until like 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, right? If I can do that with as much energy as I did the whole day, making all the lolas and the titas laugh and going down into the crowd and doing crowd work and shit, and I smoke weed all day, what does that say?
No,
you know what I'm saying?
And that's why, like, I like to consider myself like as a highly functioning pothead.
Yeah, like I think there's very few people who are not functioning potheads. I think that's very much a stereotype that was brought on about the guys who kind of inspired our duo, the Cheech and Chong jokes and all the pothead jokes about Cheech being, obviously Cheech is very smart And so is Tommy Chong, because Tommy Chong has probably a multi-million-dollar business when it comes to cannabis and cannabis accessories. So, that was a character he was playing. The real life Tommy Chong is a motivated stoner. You know what I mean? Stoned and successful.
That is true. Like, when I think about it, like, I don't know of any stoners.
Think about it. Look at Snoop Dogg.
That's true. But like, even personally, like I'm trying to think of any stoners like within my group of friends or family that just don't get stuff done. And
yeah, that dysfunctional stoner, that couch lock stoner, that's a myth. It's a myth. It's a stereotype, and I'm sure there's stoners like that. I'm sure. I'm not saying that there aren't, but for the most part, the majority, especially as it becomes more a part of the a medical thing and it becomes more recreational all across the country and more accepted all across this country, bro. You know what I'm saying?
I think the thing that just gets me is that in terms of how people view marijuana users, it's kind of like alcoholics. Like they think that marijuana is affecting their lives negatively.
And if that's the way you're gonna think of it, for me, after I've already even just showed for you, I didn't tell you, I showed you, because that's been my motto with everything I do, with all the art that I do. Show, don't tell, right? I'm gonna show you. I'm not gonna tell. I will tell you a little bit, but I'm gonna show you more than I'm gonna tell you. And this podcast is an example of us showing folks that they're not even just functional stoners, but motivated stoners to do stuff and get this message out there. And even us having this discussion, bro, is a great, I feel like it's a pebble in a pond that the ripples will hopefully, if people are listening to this, they'll have these conversations with their friends and their family members, because you almost have to, especially if you're using cannabis in the way that I use cannabis, and you're there and you're still trying to hide it from everybody. That's a hard position to be in, especially at family functions or kainans or all those things. So that to me is almost why we have this podcast, and I'm glad we had this discussion.
No, like one of the things that I'm like really trying to wrap my head around is one of like, oh wow, I'm like all over the place right now. Anyways, no, one of the reasons like I wanted to do this podcast with you is to have discussions like this and to try to normalize, what we go through every day as people who use it every day.
Right.
And the thing that bothers me is that it's that stigma where people attach like this notion of self-destructiveness or like lack of self-confidence or esteem.
But the only way that you'll ever what's the word? The only way you'll ever actually do that is by actually doing that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because what you were doing when they were judging you about whatever you were associated with, their judgment of that doesn't have to be whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Their judgment of that has no effect on, or their perception of that has no effect on who you are as a person or how you.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my own thing anyways.
Right. That's what and I feel like that's part of why I love doing these Filipino festivals, because we didn't have this stuff in Chicago. These literally are fucking parties for me. Every time I get to host something like this, it's like a dream come true to me, because I used to hope that Filipinos would show up to shows. And then to see a whole bunch of Filipinos and to be able to do crowd work with that Lolo, what was it, Tito Al?
Yeah.
I mean, that was, and then of course how I misread Andrew's, I had you rolling on my misinterpretation of the Cluster Fest.
No, that was, so if you didn't listen to the last episode, Eric was introducing Andrew Arolfo, another great Filipino.
We didn't talk about this in the last episode.
I thought we did.
No, we had the last episode and we're talking about being being at the Long Beach Filipino Festival, and now we're talking about the post of what happened at the festival. And so no, we haven't.
Oh, okay.
We talked about this in the car, but we can talk about what happened in the car later.
But yeah. But anyway, marijuana does affect the memory. That's the one thing it does. But anyways, so Eric was bringing up Andrew Arolfo. If you guys haven't heard of Andrew Arolfo, he's a great Filipino comic from the Bay Area.
Shout him out. Go follow him on Instagram. Do all the things.
And Eric was literally reading off a paper, and one of Andrew's accomplishments is he participated in Cluster Fest.
You see, you almost said it too.
No, I'm just making sure I don't mess it up. Like, But Eric was just like, oh yeah, he's been on the clusterfuck, and then immediately, like I bust out laughing, and he's just like, oh, I
immediately gaslit the crowd and said, nope, I did not say that. I did not say that. I said clusterfuck, and I stopped myself. I said he's been at Clusterfest. Yeah. And then I corrected myself and then went on. And then Andrew, when he was on stage, was like, well, apparently your host can't read. But anyway, let's go.
No, but just the fact that immediately it was just like, nope, didn't say it. You never heard it. Like,
because there were kids in the crowd. I'm not trying to say clusterfuck on the stage and at the Long Beach Filipino Festival. But guess what, guys? I did. So whatever.
He did.
It happened, and it happened, and you know what? Those kids were going to hear that word eventually anyway. So
I just hope
my
that
kids hear it. So guess what? Their kids heard it that day too.
I hope they clip it and then they put it on the
on
the website.
Great. I love that. I would love that so much. That would be the best. But anyway, I want to talk about the end of the day because the end of the day was when Kendrick dropped "Not Like Us." Right as we were wrapping up the thing, a kid like ran up to me and said, Kendrick dropped a new song. And I was like, what? Kendrick dropped a new song? And then I looked it up and I was like listening to it. And I probably listened to the first minute of the song on my phone, stuck in my ear, running around like a little kid going, Kendrick dropped. Oh my God, it sounds so good.
So Eric has been supremely involved in the Kendrick.
Obsessed.
Yeah, no, it's straight up. So on the way to Long Beach, Eric caught me up. He played all the songs for me in order and gave me context
and lyrical breakdowns.
He did
all the quadruple and triple entendres that Drake was asking for that Kendrick slapped him with in every single track. But anyway, yes, okay.
So Eric caught me up. He got me up to speed, and like I had been following it like loosely on social media, and I was like, okay, it's another rap beef. But Eric, like when I ran into Eric on Saturday, he was like, hey, Have you been listening to this? Do you know what's going on? And he straight up played the entire playlist for me. And then that night, yeah, Kendrick drops Not Like Us. And this
which was a banger. And by the way, since Kendrick released the copyright from all creators, shout out to Kendrick on that. That's where he really won the beef, was allowing creators to use it, because he knew that part of the reason why he won the beef and why the song was so viral was because everybody was reacting to it online. So he released the copyrights to all the creators so they could make their money on it, which is that's the mic drop on this whole thing. When you want to say you support the culture, he really does support the culture. But so we should play just the beginning of it. Can we play just the beginning of it?
And will it get flagged?
No, it won't. Because plus we already get flagged because shout out to the guy that's on our theme song, Trey Cat. And the song that whenever you listen to the podcast, the song is Hella Fusion by Trey Cat. Shout out to him. He's a Filipino MC out of San Diego, and he allowed us to use the song. But even though he allowed us to use the song and gave us the track that's copyright released, it still gets flagged on YouTube.
Really?
So, yeah, because the record labels got to release it. Or the artist has to expressly tell the record labels to release it, which is what Kendrick did, which is pretty damn cool. And when you would talk about supporting the culture, that's really supporting the culture.
Because he's letting people talk. He's letting people do whatever.
But it also, he understands that part of this new media culture that we live in is, it's not about copyrights necessarily, especially when you're using it to promote or you're saying nice things about, like maybe it's a copyright infringement if we did a whole Drake video and pissed him off, and whatever, and his team saw it and don't use our music in this or that. That's different.
Did you see Questlove's response to the beef?
Yeah. He's kind of elder statesman, and the Roots have always been above it, all the beef. They've always been that way. Mm-hmm. It's probably part of the reason why they're my favorite, is because it's always been about the music with them, and same thing with Mos Def, and we'll get into that. But
okay.
But yeah, I mean, like, part of the reason why Kendrick won was because he knew what the culture was feeling. He said it in the rap.
Well, yeah, he's more in touch with it. Like, I totally get the
culture vulture.
Yeah, I get that. I totally get how, like, people can view Drake as just coming in, trying to make a quick buck off of, like, other people's hard work. Like, he's pretty much biting their styles, is what a lot of people have said.
And you could see it in his music.
And I could totally see where he's pissed off a lot of people. Like, he's gotten on a lot of people's bad sides.
He's basically, in a lot of ways, when you think about it, if you run down the list, and we don't have to run down the list here. You can go on other videos who know all the names better than we do. But there's lists. He like lists of the famous people up to including Rihanna and, you know, obviously Pharrell and of course Kendrick. And
then like the Drake apologists that are like, well, he's been doing this for a while. Why are you guys saying stuff now? It's like, no, they've been saying stuff for years.
Right. And that brings me to the significance of Kendrick Lamar, because it wasn't until, because Pusha T murdered him on that first battle when he lost, and then then Meek Mill, who he just beat in a battle, wasn't up to the and his cachet as far as the culture. Meek Mill holds down Philly, but he's not necessarily a household name, whereas Kendrick Lamar is his last album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, won 8 Grammys, and that's not even talk about, you know, all the other albums, Damn and obviously Good Kid, Mad City, and Section 80.
That was my favorite.
Good Kid, Mad City is your favorite?
Yeah, that's my favorite.
See, and Good Kid, Mad City was my favorite, and then Damn. But now, because this beef has kind of forced me to go into listening to Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, because I really only listened to that when it came out, and I hadn't revisited it.
There's some good songs on there, though.
And the thing, I said this to you when we were talking about what we were going to talk about today, but I heard it, or no, I listened to it, but I didn't hear it the first couple of times that I heard it. And this past time, with the context of this beef and everything that he was talking about in the beef, but also just the way he moved in the beef.
No, but like, even what's the one song?
He's a genius artist, man.
What's the one song off of Mr. Rich King, or is that what it's called?
I got you.
He's the one where he says like, "I'll turn you into a song." You know?
Oh yeah.
Rich Spirit.
Yeah. And Rich Spirit.
Yeah, so like when he says is like, hey, you know, stop talking about me, I'll turn you into a song. That's exactly what he did to Drake. Like
he turned him into a series of really good songs, and
he still has more in the chamber. If
he said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 5, I mean, he said it in like that, not like us. So I think that it's really very interesting, because for me, it forces us to kind of, for me at least, it forced me to reevaluate my relationship with hip hop, because I grew up with this shit.
Yeah.
Like, it was a trip, because when we were talking about albums and albums that we like, you talked about The Chronic.
Yep.
And you confused it with The Chronic that kind of hit you at that right time of age. And you were talking about The Chronic 2001.
Yeah.
With M and Dre and Snoop.
Yeah.
And I was talking about The Chronic, the original The Chronic with Dr. Dre and Snoop. And I think there are a whole bunch of other.
There's a bunch of features.
There's a bunch of features on Corrupt and all these other cats that are on there. Really, L.A., but also like that was one of the first albums when I heard it. I was like, man, I think I might want to try this thing that they're smoking and sipping gin and juice and rolling down the street by. I want to try this endo, this weed that they're smoking. I want to try this shit. It really was. It really did. Like, the music made me think. I'm like, no, I might want to. Yeah, and yes, maybe if they say that hip hop corrupts the youth, then it corrupted this youth to want to smoke weed for sure.
I would say that in terms of hip hop, I was telling you this, that I didn't really come into music until about high school. Growing up, like, my parents listened to a lot of radio, so it's a lot of like Coast 103.5, like easy listening. They listened to pop. They had their people that they liked, and then
my dad, it was Chicago and Billy Joel.
Yeah, all of those guys.
Yeah, I love that shit too. I love Barry Manilow. I love all that shit.
You're the reason in my life.
You're the inspiration.
Yeah, I got you, dude. I got you. No, all of those, like,
I got all that.
So all that, but then it wasn't until I got to high school where my friends started getting me into more different types of music. Like, so in high school, like, I discovered like rock and punk, and like that was high school. High school was all of our discovery periods of music. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And a lot of the music I listened to was like, if I was into a girl, I'd be talking to her and she's like, I listen to this, and I'd be like, I like that too. I was one of those guys.
I was the exact opposite. I was literally the exact opposite. I was like, oh, you like that? We can't hang out anymore. And that was me. No, for real. Because I watched because I saw your video. Follow Mitch on Instagram because he posts some funny ass videos where he talked. It was like the voiceover of this girl. We said, "Did girls have crushes on you
in high school, or are you funny now?"
And then anyway, I'm not going to spoil the punchline, but go watch it on Instagram. It's a really funny video. And okay, again, we're like, we are the yin and yang of each other because I didn't struggle for, especially when I was younger in Chicago. I was like the only brown face in Chicago, so I was like exotic to all the different girls in Chicago because I was just a different, I was like a unicorn.
Yeah, I was experimenting with a lot of different music. Hip hop didn't really lock in for me until probably college. So that was the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And when I actually started looking into it and doing the history and doing my research and like just discovering all of the music that I hadn't known before.
Yeah.
That's when I was like, oh, hip hop is one of my staples, it's one of the mainstays, And like growing up in LA, I grew up like in the era of like, like you were saying, like Dre, Snoop, Pac, like all those guys.
You grew up. Did you experience the East-West beef at all? Did you see it? Did you kind of like see it at all when you were living here?
I remember,
because I was in Chicago at that time.
I remember that it was around. It wasn't.
I followed it, bro. I was a student of it.
I was so disconnected from it. I would listen to stuff. Like I remember
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like when people are talking about online being like, "Oh my God, Kendrick was so disrespectful," or Drake was so disrespectful, like. Pac said, "Fuck your clique and fuck your bitch and the clique you claim. I fucked your wife." Like that was like the first.
Make sure all your kids don't grow.
I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Like that's what beef is.
Yeah.
That's hip hop beef. So that's everything's kind of not fair game necessarily, but once you go there, you go there.
Yeah. So I remember listening to that stuff. I didn't grow to appreciate. Tupac as much until later when I started actually listening, because like it was like, okay, what can I listen to versus like, okay, let me examine the content, like what is he actually saying.
What's the trip is I as far as my relationship with Tupac, I'm very similar to you in that because I grew up in Chicago, so I was very much more influenced by the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
So I was
bless you. Salud.
Anyway, sorry, excuse me. No, but I was very much more influenced on the East Coast. So, and I was a Biggie guy to begin with. I love Notorious B.I.G. Like that was the first celebrity who died, and I remember I actually cried. There's like two or three, Christopher Wallace, Robin Williams, and that's it. Yeah,
that's only two.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to think if there was another one, but I don't.
Eric can't count.
No, I was just trying to leave space if there was another one that I can remember. Oh yes, no, Chadwick Boseman.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, when Chadwick Boseman died, I was like, what the fuck? And yeah, and tears started rolling down. So those three guys, yeah, for sure. But my relationship with Tupac was more about when I moved here, and I started listening to him and hearing his words more because. You can't help it. I mean, his face is on the murals out here. You can't avoid Tupac in LA. So you almost have to understand Tupac almost to understand LA out here and understand people who listen to hip hop out here. You know what I'm saying?
No, like one of the things that I loved growing up is that I traveled a lot when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I would go to like different countries and people would be rocking like Tupac shirts. Like occasionally I'd see Biggie shirts, but like his influence, just the way, like his swagger and his charisma and everything, like appealed to people or affected people. Like his influence, I didn't fully understand that when he was around. But then the older I got, I was like, damn, he really put LA on the map for a lot of people.
I mean, and then I was lucky enough because you remember Brian Koo?
Yeah.
He did the karaoke show a couple times with me.
Mm-hmm.
He took me to that.
The exhibit,
and it was literally just how when you're walking in a line at the amusement park,
mm-hmm.
where you're kind of just walking really slow because the people in front of you are walking really slow, and it's like that deep of people in a line.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And we're just people in a line and just walking and looking at his notes, and it was deep, like 3-4 people deep, looking at the notes and just studying his notes and just and other different artifacts from his life. And it was this huge exhibit on Tupac. And when it was there was when I really realized how big a deal Tupac was and is in Los Angeles. And so I kind of understood in the beef, to bring it back to, you know, the current, when Drake, that leak sampled what was the song? I can't remember now. I can't even remember now. I almost put it out of my head. But the leak song where he used Tupac's voice.
Oh, the AI thing?
Yeah, Tailor Made. And he used Tupac's voice, and then it subsequently used Snoop's voice, and he used both of them to insult Kendrick as far as being the king of the West Coast, and I thought you were supposed to hold down the West Coast. And then to use Tupac's voice, that is very, especially now I know how I understand how on the West Coast Tupac is a different level of icon. You don't do that.
Yeah,
don't do that.
A lot of people were salty too because like he did it to Snoop, and Snoop is alive, because he knows if he had actually gone to Snoop and tried to get Snoop to like feature or say any of this stuff, Snoop would be like, "Get the fuck out of here!"
Yeah,
like
he wouldn't say shit because Snoop was the guy at the House of Blues. Snoop and a few other icons of the West Coast, and I'm sure Dre was there too. But they gave, you know,
they called him the future of hip hop.
They called him the future of hip hop on the West Coast, and be the king of the West Coast. That's Kendrick.
And that's why I respect Kendrick a lot more. Like, not only is he like homegrown, you know, he's LA, like through and through.
Through and through. That's a Compton kid through and through. Even in his name, he calls himself the Compton Kid. Like all this stuff, like everything. Like I from Good Kid, Mad City, because it was probably by far one of the best albums period I've ever heard, for me, but it's not on my top 3 desert island albums. And I figure we should probably
move on to that now.
We should move on to that, because I mean, you know, we're running up on time here, and I kind of wanted to end on that. And I mean, we had a nice, really great discussion on the current beef. We talked about the LBC, which was great. Shout out again to Philip Austria for the opportunity. And now I wanted to end it on your top 3. If you had a pound of weed and you were stuck on a desert island, what are the 3 hip hop albums you would choose to be with you to listen to? The only 3 you have.
Okay, so these aren't in any order, but we already mentioned the Chronic 2001?
2001.
Yeah. Just because like that was height of hip hop for me. Like, that was when I was like, oh, I'm fully in. I'm in this. Like, I'm down for...
Well, it pulled you to fully in.
Yeah, well, I was already, like, around it, but this one was the one where I was like, okay, I'm old enough to make my own decisions, and I really like this.
Yeah,
you know,
I feel you.
Like, it was just like, okay, this is the type of music I like to listen to, right? And it gave us just a ton of good songs, man.
Come on, man.
Like, it had Eminem on it, and I've already said he's one of my tops.
It introduced us to Eminem.
Yeah.
And let's go. I don't care if we go long. Who cares?
Yeah.
So what's your second one?
I am a the Roots fan.
Yeah, you got to put the Roots. I learned that you can't put Roots because then some other shit comes up.
Yeah.
But the Roots.
But Tipping Point is a really good one.
Mm-hmm. That's a great one. I would, if I could, I'd take the whole Roots catalog with me and just, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, they have really good. But Tipping Point for me was just it was. It was a different kind of hip hop for me. It was a more musical hip hop.
Well, they're a band.
Yeah, no, that's why. Like, it was more of like, you know, it still had the soul.
It was a musical. It was like almost like Earth, Wind, and Fire meets hip hop.
Yeah, it was elevated for me. It's an elevated form of hip hop.
Definitely, yes, for sure.
So that's why I like that, because it just showed me like
I've just seen them 5 times live. They're one of my favorite bands. I'll show you all the 3 shirts I have. The Roots are my favorite.
No, but they just showed me like hip hop is a very long or large spectrum.
Versatile. Yeah, there's so many things. But I mean, because hip hop is the hip hop culture. There's so many aspects to it. Cannabis is part of hip hop culture. Mm-hmm. Filipino American comedy is part of hip hop culture.
Filipinos in general, because like all the Filipinos that have immigrated to the U.S. and even applies to Filipinos in the motherland.
Bro, the Tagalog rap that's coming out right now. Morro Beach. Shout out to Morro Beach. Shout out to
Med Messiah.
Shout out to Lilo Marfil, who just went and visited Apong Nuang and got some tattoos, but also did a music video about it. I mean, like the hip.
Wang Od. What?
There you go. I can never.
Oh, I was like,
Wang Od. There you go. Apo, but she's Apo, right?
Yeah.
And then Wang Od. Thank you. Sorry, I apologize. Mano, sorry, Mano po, sorry. But don't grab my dick. I'm sorry.
You're stupid. You went Piolo.
I'll let her grab my dick and then give me a tattoo. I'm down for that. I'm not worried about it. If she wants to grab it, she can grab it. It's not like my uncles haven't grabbed it before. Come on, y'all. We all had abuse. I've been listening to Mr. Morale. Anyway, I'm sorry, I interrupted. Number one.
Okay. And number one, it would be
go ahead.
Tupac, All Eyes on Me.
Yeah.
That's the one album.
You see, guys, you see how it affects Los Angelinos? His number one is All Eyes on Me.
No, all I'm saying is, like, dude, when I was in high school and college, if I was listening to All Eyes on Me, and this was before, like, you know, Spotify or whatever, I had the CDs. Mm-hmm. I had that stuff would just be stuck in my CD player, and I can't even explain how cool I would feel, like, just rolling through the neighborhood listening to that, right? Mm-hmm. It just made you feel cooler, you know. Like I was
even his flow, his bounce, even the way that you know what I mean. Like I'm doing it right now, like his bounce, like that way it just made you feel cooler for sure.
No, and then see the thing that made me feel cool is like I'm rolling around in you saw my old car. It was like a 2005 Scion XB, right? It was a box. It's a toaster on wheels, and I would have all my windows down. I had a sub in the back, and I'd be blasting it, right? Yeah. Like I would be blasting, just freaking. Like
just like we were doing when we were driving home from Long Beach Filipino Festival, and when Not Like Us came up, we repeated that 4 or 5 times in the car.
A couple, because I had to hear it. No, because out of all the songs that you played, like that one was like, oh, this one hits hard.
That song hits so hard, like so hard. It's like the best. But okay, so All Eyes on Me. Okay, now give me your top 3 MCs.
I thought we did this.
No, we never did this. We did this outside in the bench smoking, but we never did this.
Okay, so in terms of MCs, I would say Eminem is in my top 3. Mm-hmm. Like he's one of my favorites. I just think that like lyrically and like the way he puts rhyme schemes together, like he's just. I feel he could be number 1, but he's never going to be number 1 because he's not black. And you know, like I just feel like hip hop is such like a black dominated space, and like if
he also when it's an interview, you know, so you say stupid things in an interview sometimes, but he also did say that some black people are racist, and then which you know unfortunately is true, but at the same time, you know, he said it, and the one person who probably couldn't say it is this guy who's benefited. He's like the Elvis of hip hop, so he benefited a lot from it. So that's part of the reason why he's not in my top 3, only because of that. But he's in my top 5 for sure.
I wouldn't put him on the same level as Elvis, though.
No, I would never. But he is definitely the Elvis of hip hop.
I can't agree with that.
No. I'm wrong. Well, the only reason I say that is because Elvis reached a level of his success that was huge.
No, but so for me,
because you could say Vanilla Ice was the original Elvis of hip hop, but because he was the one who he even fabricated the story there, where it came from. It was a totally different thing.
Like I don't feel Eminem has ever exploited hip hop.
No, and that's why I'm saying. But in parallels, that's all I'm saying. Just in cultural parallels, you can kind of say that.
Okay.
That's just me.
But anyways.
Anyway, go ahead.
So Eminem is one in my top. Mos Def.
Yes.
Mos Def, just in terms of content and just like what he puts out there, I think.
And what he stands for, and the whole him and Talib Kweli with Black Star Eternal. I mean, that was the best. Yeah, they're awesome.
And then who'd my third be?
Pac isn't in there.
It fluctuates because like growing up I was always down for Pac, but then as I got older I realized like he had a swagger to him. Okay, I will concede one thing. Okay, if we're gonna do Tupac versus Biggie,
no, the only reason I ask you is because your number 1 album is All Eyes on Me by Pac. That's the only reason I ask.
I'm basing this off of like who I actually listen to, like on a regular basis, and like growing up, like I said, like Pac was always like he was always number 1. But then And then I would be like, nah, Biggie, no. But then like once I started to listen to stuff from Biggie, and I'm just like,
wow.
yeah, and realizing like the dude freaking never wrote anything down, right? Like
so fucking good.
He just went off the top of his dome.
All
the time.
you Los Angelinos who are listening to this, and if you're young enough to have never checked out Notorious B.I.G., you know,
I don't think there's any Angelinos that haven't though. Like
you just said that you just discovered it in your 20s. So
no, I didn't.
You know what I mean?
I didn't say I discovered it. I said like I grew to appreciate.
Well, and there you go. That's all I'm saying. I'm just opening it up and putting it out there to Los Angelinos because Biggie Tupac was awesome because if you appreciated both, like I was able to kind of in the Midwest, I was able to appreciate both of them, and I was like, and it was like watching the Super Bowl of hip hop. It was great to watch, but then it unfortunately ended the way it ended. But we don't need to, you know. And so, did you have a number one?
I don't. I like I said, there's no particular order. Like if there was a top three, who would be my last? Who would be my last MC? Probably Kendrick, because like he just like lyrically, the guy, he's on another level. I can't always.
He's a poet, man.
Yeah, I can't. Like myself personally, I can't always catch like his references and whatnot, and that's why like I appreciate people that break down his lyrics. Mm-hmm. But what he raps about and how just people in the industry like respect him because he actually has a voice and he knows what to do with it. He's actually making hip hop better. So when he passes it off to whoever's gonna be next, like they have a high standard to me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like
for sure.
So I think Kendrick, like in recent years, he's become he's really gotten up there.
For sure.
Like if I wanted to do like honorable mentions, like Black Thought would be up there.
You've literally already mentioned my top three.
Oh yeah.
You're the last three people you mentioned are my top three.
So run it back.
So run it back. It's all good. I'll put them in order. Mos Def is number one for me.
Okay.
Because that motherfucker rapped about water for 5 minutes on his first album, and the shit made me understand how water is scarce. Like that bitch that's the Mighty Mos, aka Yasin Bey. Man, I mean, for sure, number one. Never, undoubted, never will ever, because he was the guy who made me fall in love with hip hop and made me understand the power of hip hop. Because I don't know if, and now I'm really aging myself, but at the same time, fuck it. Hip hop is 50 years old. I'm 50 years old. Hip hop turned 50 last year. I'm turning 50 this year. So whatever. I've seen all of hip hop.
I appreciate Mos because he made me love fat booties.
Come on, his ass so fat you can see it from the front. Come on. But anyhow, Mos, there was a moment when Al Gore was on MTV, when people were still watching MTV, and this hip hop head, because Tipper Gore, Al Gore's wife, was all about that censorship sticker and stuff. And then there was a cat who asked the question of Al Gore, and he's like, I want you guys to understand and understand the power of hip hop and what it can do and what it can be, because in this album where he gave him Mos Def's Black on Both Sides, the first album with just his face, and as Mos Def, that's the one with Miss Fat Booty on it. He handed it to Al Gore, and he said, "This is what hip hop can be." And then I was like, that was amazing to me. You know what I'm saying? Because of how
is that is that one of your top albums too?
Yes,
okay.
For sure. But it's not. It flips. The number one album that I'm going to end this whole thing with is it flips between Black on Both Sides and that.
Okay, so you got Mos and then Black on Both Sides. Okay.
No. Yeah, but well, yeah. Let's do Black on Both Sides, and then my second MC would be Black Thought.
Okay.
And the Roots and their entire catalog.
All right.
From Phrenology and all from If You Are Worried About Where I've Been a Who. That shit. Oh my God, that shit was fire. When I was in college, that was on repeat the whole. I think I might have drove home and back on that song.
Just listening, baby, you got me.
Well, also to try and figure out what the hell she was saying, what Erica Badu was saying, and that, because when you first hear that song, it's almost not gibberish, but you're like, if you are worried about where I was, who's the size, you're trying to figure it out. But then once I figured it out, I sing along every time. But yeah, number 2 is Black Thought, and then number 3 is Kendrick. If I had to pick a MC from the modern era, as far as the best MC from the modern era, it would be Kendrick Lamar. For sure. What
were your albums?
Now my albums, yes, let's have Black on Both Sides be an honorable mention, only because my albums are the Tribe Called Quest, Low End Theory.
Okay.
And then I can't think of anything else but Kendrick right now. I don't know why. But what was the second one that I had?
You had Kendrick's.
That's the third one. That's actually my number one right now. Like if I was stranded on a desert island, I would want to have A Tribe Called Quest, Low End Theory. I would want to have which one is it now? Why can't I remember?
Mr.
You
were saying I think it was Diggable Planets.
Thank you. Reachin'. That's why I was reaching for the damn title of the album. Reachin', Refutation of Time and Space. Diggable Planets. It was almost, both of those albums, Low End Theory and the Diggable Planets album, almost was like, I had already loved hip hop from Run DMC because I grew up with the shit. But that was when I found like how you said, when you were an adult and you kind of made that decision to really, like, this is the type of hip hop that I like. That was when, like, Low End Theory, Tribe Called Quest, from Scenario, and from the top track 1 all the way down to Scenario being the finale, and that Busta Rhymes rhyme at the end, like, classic. And then, it's just a trip, man. But my number one nowadays, and what I would want on a desert island, if somebody pulled me from a desert island right now and gave me a pound of weed and said I could only have one album, it would be Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers by Kendrick Lamar. That shit is like a therapy session. And if y'all, really, it is. If you listen to the lyrics, you can listen from track 1 all the way to the end. And it is Kendrick's journey. It took him 5 years to write the dang thing because he needed to go to therapy and he needed to do these things. And it's his journey. And there's so many parts of it because, me coming back to comedy and doing things that after I was dropped from my agent and doing these things, like, I needed therapy for those things. So I empathize so much with that album. Like, I almost am I have the same catharsis that Kendrick has listening to the album that he must have had making the album. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, he transferred that experience onto us.
That's a sign of a good artist, though.
Yeah,
like
that's
being able to evoke.
That's the art. That's what art is supposed to do. So yeah, for sure. So if you guys haven't listened to that and you guys are listening to Not Like Us for the 100th time, turn it off and put on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, because this shit, it's amazing. And it won 8 Grammys, so you should really listen to it. But I don't know, we should wrap this up, I guess.
Yeah, we should. We're coming up on our time. So, guys, before we head out, if you guys have your favorite MCs or your favorite albums, hit us up. Let us know if we missed anyone or if we made any mistakes or if you guys have any thoughts or whatever.
Yeah, man. Tell us who you thought won the great rap beef of 2024 in the comments. Write a review of this episode, because I feel like this is what we're going to keep doing, is how did cannabis affect us and how it affects pop culture, but also, all the other stuff. We didn't do a grow update, but that's okay. We'll do it next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good.
They're still growing.
It's coming. The final gelato, because just a quick grow update before we go. The monster clones are all dead.
Oh.
All the clones died. And so this gelato 33 harvest is going to be the final one, so we need to savor it and maybe hold on to a jar. Because it'll be the last of the Gelato 33. But we have a wedding cake autoflower that's also coming. Yeah. So follow us on Canna Kuyas Grow on Instagram, and you'll see pictures and video and updates. Look at our stories and watch the post, because you'll see all the plants that we're growing on that. We post the pictures and the videos there. So follow us on Instagram at Canna Kuyas Grow. Write a review for us. And again, no one has still sent us a screen cap of their review, because the first one who does will get a Canna Kuyas t-shirt of your choosing. So write a review and send us a screen cap of that review, and we will definitely send you out a t-shirt. So do that. And I've been Eric Esteban.
And I'm Mitch Narita, and you've been listening to the Canna Kuyas podcast, where we are cultivating conversations concerning cannabis, culture, and creativity. So to all the marijuana ates and the Canna Kuyas, stay lifted,
stay elevated. Peace, y'all.
Take it easy, everybody.
They not like us. They not like us. They not like us.
Why you gotta shock them like that? Turn it off. Turn it off.
Mitch is rolling his eyes at me.
All my targets lined up. Every day my girl get fined up. All my clothes is local, bitch. I really rock designer.
Gang, highest in the room, yo, we get fucked up. Hey, you can count on Trey, bring the loud pack. Hey, get a us in the stew and that's game over. Western metal building, that's a home run. Yeah, get the up or leave the fuck a Folgers. Little bitch, I made the beat and dropped the full verse. I just hit a steelo, I got dripped up. Package born and raised, bitch, I got dripped up. Y no se compara. Yo estoy con mi pana, se llama Trigger, fumando ganja. Estamos con Cali, fumando en Cali, yo sé que traen ganas. Ella me dice, papi, que terminamos la cama. Highest in the room, yeah, we get fucked up. You can count on Trey Cap, bring the loud pack. Get us in the stew and that's game over. Western metal building, that's a home run.
Yeah, we got hits like Tatis and Machado. Man, we know you're not a leader, cause all our moves you just follow, packing big bowls. You know we just scooped up that gelato, cause I smoke killer. My shirt iller, yo, ask our dealer, we the highest in the room. Just look up once and you can find us. Our song should have more plays, but we too though, they rewind us. All my targets lined up, every day my girl get fined up. All my clothes is local, bitch, I rarely rock designer.
Highest in the room, yeah, we get fucked up. You can count on Trey Cap, bring the loud pack. Get us in the stew and that's game over. Western metal building, that's a home.